Energy, superpower. Those are the words that I've been waiting to hear my entire life. And Mark Carney had a meeting between all the first ministers on how Canada will become an energy superpower. When you go to bed at night, I'm sure you're thinking, how can we become rich? And this is exactly how Canadians could have a better standard of living, becoming this energy superpower. When I hear that Canada's going to become an energy superpower, this is exactly what I imagine. You call your doctor and you have him or her come to your house the same day. Forget going to a doctor's office. We have so many doctors in this country. They just show up to your house. And a hospital? Oh yeah, you just walk in within 15 minutes, you're already checked in. And within an hour, you have a diagnosis. You get an MRI that day. And if you need surgery, you are getting it the same day you walk into that hospital. And if you get a cancer diagnosis, they start the treatment immediately. None of this 2-year wait list stuff. And made in Canada? That doesn't exist because we have the best healthcare on planet Earth. You don't need made, you get care. And our streets are absolutely flawless. There are 0 potholes in Canada. Every road is pristine. And if you make $100,000, you have the nicest house you could imagine. None of this glorified modular homes. That doesn't exist unless you're camping somewhere. Those are your camping modular homes. And you could eat steak every night if you want to, because food in this country is no longer a luxury item. And when you get paid the entire salary because Canada no longer collects income taxes. You get all of it. Because the government will not be bleeding you dry, because they will generate hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars in revenue from our oil and gas reserves. This is what a true energy superpower looks like. So when Mark Carney says that we're going to become an energy superpower, let's get excited, Canada, because all of these things I mentioned could be a reality in this country. Just for example, Saudi Arabia, they don't have income taxes there. They have free healthcare and they have wealth transfers to citizens. Currently in Canada, we are rich in natural resources and oil, and we are taxed into oblivion and beyond. And we have this rationed healthcare system where 50% of Canadians currently don't have a doctor. And the government tells us that the Canadian dream is owning modular homes. That is the dream that you are going to get. And just so you know, it's not about how many resources we have. It's about our leadership. Let's get into the segment. Danielle Smith just dropped a bomb. Canada has a total of $9 trillion worth of oil underneath our Canadian soil. And that estimate is based on $60 per barrel. We've seen oil prices go into the $150 range. So let's just say it moved up to $100 per barrel. Though that would be $14 trillion worth of oil reserves. And that's based on current technology. If we have better technology, we could tap into even more oil under our feet. It could be astronomical, the amount of money our country can make. And just for reference, the Canadian debt clock, we are at $1.3 trillion. So imagine all of that oil reserve and we sold it to the world. We could pay off our national deficit with a flick. It would be gone. No more taxes, no more deficits. We just live in prosperity, wealth, and power. If you want to travel around the world, we would have the strongest currency on planet Earth. Go ahead, enjoy your vacation. Get some of that sunshine and make memories with your children. So what's the plan from Ottawa and Mark Carney? I'm excited. What's the plan, Mark Carney? When he says energy superpower, what he is actually saying is green energy superpower. He wants decarbonized oil. Yeah, you can't make any of this stuff up. The only pipelines that we're going to allow in Canada is oil that has been scrubbed of all carbon before selling it. They call this net zero oil. Here's the catch. Decarbonized oil needs nuclear energy in order to abstract the carbon. We also need the carbon capture technology that doesn't fully exist right now to scale this thing up and get it done. So they're not going to approve any pipelines across this country until we have the tech. We have the money to build out all of this decarbonization before we even sell 1 barrel to the world. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? You don't sit on a gold mine waiting for solar panels to dig it all up. You sell the damn gold. For example, if we sold our oil immediately, built these pipelines, we'd bring in the revenue to create the tech and to build out this decarbonized oil. But at the end of the day, why are we decarbonizing the oil in the first place? Is the US decarbonizing their oil? Is Saudi Arabia decarbonizing their oil? Are we still shipping coal to China right now? Make it make sense. Let's hear Mark Carney's decarbonized oil.
Minister, other than the premiers of BC and Quebec, there seems to be growing consensus in support of pipelines carrying bitumen east, west, probably north as well. Is the federal government at this point considering pipelines a project of national significance, and will you be sidestepping certain environmental requirements outlined in Bill C-69 to fast track such a project?
Well, the first thing to say is, and let me be a bit more specific, if I could, because and I will defer to the premiers to add, but the Western premiers and the premiers of the territories met and supported an approach. The Western corridor, the Western and Arctic corridor, effectively a corridor between port to port to port, from Pacific Northwest to James Bay to Grays Bay Point, and within that are opportunities in energy, critical minerals, and well beyond, and specifically within energy, opportunities, yes, for an oil pipeline to get to Tidewater. Now, within the broader context of.
First of all, did you just hear that? He said, oil pipeline. Means one.
Of national interest. The interest is in, as mentioned in the press release, decarbonized barrels. So working alongside forms of decarbonization for those barrels. That is absolutely in our interest. It provides diversification of trade partners. It provides the development of new industries. It provides economic activity across the West and into the North. So yes, there's real potential there. We took up a good deal of our time in discussions and potential to move forward on that. And if further developed, the federal government will look to advance.
Decarbonized oil. Did you get that, Canada? Because it's going to create all of these additional industries, because we have to create the technology and industry to decarbonize all of the oil. Are you kidding me right now? Does the US decarbonize their oil? Does Saudi Arabia decarbonize their oil? Who in the hell in the entire world decarbonizes the oil? Only in Canada. So if you were hoping that we'd become this energy superpower, now we have to do it in a way that decarbonizes the oil. Can you imagine how we're going to do that? It sounds like, and we heard from Danielle Smith, let's see what she says about this decarbonized oil.
So if I'm understanding correctly, Prime Minister, you are saying that you would fast track a project involving decarbonized oil through pipelines, decarbonized energy. And is that something that, Premier Smith, that you agree with, or do you feel that we need to get the bitumen out of the ground now as is, as soon as possible?
Well, let's call it the grand bargain, that we know that there is a group of oil sands companies that have been advocating for some time for what they call the Pathways Project that would decarbonize the production of their bitumen through the use of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, ultimately using hydroelectric or small modular nuclear to decarbonize, and then direct air capture for the last mile. I think the point I was making to the Prime Minister and my colleagues is that there's lots of ways to decarbonize, but the Pathways Project is an expensive project. It would cost anywhere from $10 to $20 billion to get built. And to make the economic case for that, having more egress with more barrels to be sold to Asia is the way to pay for it. If we had a 1 million barrel a day pipeline going to the Northwest BC coast, that would generate about $20 billion a year in revenues. And so that seems like a pretty good value proposition if both of those projects can proceed at once.
Here's the question. How many companies are going to line up and spend that type of money in Canada when they could go down to the US that ripped up the Paris Accord and has none of these ridiculous restrictions like decarbonized oil? I'm surprised that Danielle Smith didn't just straight up say, this is insanity. Let's be real, Canada. Here's a picture of Danielle Smith around this table that they were discussing about pipelines and decarbonized oil. This picture says it all. This decarbonized oil doesn't even matter. Even if it was below decarbonized and there was like, we're taking straight up all the carbon out of the atmosphere, it doesn't matter because BC Premier David Eby says he's not going to revive the Northern Gateway pipeline. It's a hell no for BC. BC, David Eby, does not care about economic prosperity in Canada, even if it's decarbonized oil. Let's go back to Mark Carney. He's got a plan. He's got this amazing plan. Let's hear Mark Carney's plan.
To build the certainty, the stability, and the ambition that builders need to catalyze enormous investment to make Canada into an energy superpower, and to build the strongest economy in the G7. We had wide-ranging discussions. There was a lot of preparation for this meeting. We discussed a wide range of potential nation-building projects, including, and this is far from exhaustive, the Western and Arctic Corridor, which, amongst other things, connects energy, critical minerals, and trade infrastructure, the Eastern Energy Partnership, critical minerals pathways, which include a range of critical mineral projects that premiers can speak to, the next stage of nuclear from uranium to SMRs to large-scale nuclear, and a series of infrastructure investments for export diversification from ports to rails to last-mile roads. All First Ministers agreed that Indigenous partnerships and equity will be central to success. And upcoming federal legislation will mandate both meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples both during the process of determining which projects are in the national interest and developing the conditions for each project. The goal here is to get projects built faster so we can create more high-paying careers and greater prosperity for all Canadians.
All right, Canada, nowhere did he say he was going to repeal any of those anti-energy bills like Bill C-69 or the anti-pipeline bill. He's not removing anything. When he says that we're going to be an economic energy superpower, what he's actually saying is a green energy superpower. Now, this is just wonderful. How are projects going to be selected to be on this list of corridors and #1 priority list?
Mr. Carney, can you spell out with some detail how exactly projects will be chosen for the list and by when, and when will we know about them?
So, several things. First, there will be review. The projects, we discussed a number of projects today. They're in various stages of preparation. They're in various stages of preparation. I think there's a shared understanding based on our discussion of the main criteria for consideration. I listed them. They're in the communique. I'm not going to repeat them given interest of time. We will work with project proponents on assessing projects relative to those criteria. As those criteria are increasingly well understood, in the national interest, Indigenous participation, example, advancing clean energy, material benefits to Canadians, as those are increasingly well understood.
Look at them mumble, material benefit to Canadians, shovel-ready projects.
Building the resilience of Canada, strategic economy of Canada, autonomy of Canada. More projects will come forward. It's not like the gate doesn't come down all of a sudden. Projects will also fall by the wayside because they won't necessarily meet all this criteria. It's a living list, but what's being clear is what's being put in place, or what is being proposed, will be proposed in legislation, is the ability of the federal government to devote the right resources to these projects, to make quick decisions about those projects that respect our environmental responsibilities, other responsibilities, work with the provinces directly to move forward and to get the country building. That's what we're talking about. Moving the country forward, building the country. I think it says it somewhere.
Talking about environmental standards at the next level. Nothing in Canada will be built unless it is net zero. You heard that correctly. He just straight up said it. And while Mark Carney was out telling us that we're going to be a green economic superpower, net zero decarbonized oil, we have Michael Barrett that is announcing something that happened yesterday, which is awesome. We are going to get a budget in Canada, and you are not going to believe what happened. The vote. 4 Liberals decided to go on summer holidays early. And that's the whole thing. They didn't want to provide us a budget because they wanted to go on summer holidays. Screw you, Canada. No budget. Well, the Conservatives put a motion. 4 Liberals didn't show up. And guess who won the vote? Yeah, the NDP, the Bloc, everybody's like, what country on planet Earth doesn't have a budget? So everybody was agreement. Let's hear the announcement.
So the first breaking news for you from me for this parliamentary session is that a Conservative motion requiring an accounting of Canada's finances, with Mark Carney having to produce a budget this spring. Now, Prime Minister Carney said he wasn't going to produce a budget at all this year, then said he would do it this fall. And then he tabled a bill with $500 billion in spending. Now, this is extraordinary. He said he was going to cap increases to government spending at 2%. This is an 8% increase. It also sees massive increases to consultants outside of government. I want you to think Arrive scam when we talk about consultants. So we need accountability. We need to see what's happening with this $500 billion. Is this more inflationary spending? And is that why the Carney Liberals don't want it scrutinized by parliamentary committees and by members of parliament from all parties? So this is a big win, and it's important. This is an important test for the new Prime Minister because he doesn't have a majority. So will he meet the deadline and get this budget in front of parliamentarians this spring? Well, stay tuned. We're just getting started.
Yeah, so even though they won, Mark Carney doesn't need to table a budget. But what will happen is if Mark Carney decides that he's still not going to provide a budget, this is a minority government. There is risk in doing that. We potentially could see the government fall if they start playing games with Canadians. And for the people out there that don't believe me that our Liberal government is so insane that they want to become this green energy superpower, here we have Tim Hodgson, which is the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. And he published on his account, I'm excited. I'm so excited, Canada. We put a legislation enabling the development of offshore renewable energy in Newfoundland and Labrador. Yeah, Canada, now we're going to start doing windmills out in the ocean. This is a fantastic way to save the planet because I'm sure those windmills are not going to affect any of the biodiversity in the ocean whatsoever. And also, what happens when the wind stops blowing? I'm sure it's going to continue to power everybody's homes. And all of these windmills, all of this stuff needs to be construction and built using fossil fuels. And at the end of their life cycle, what do they do with the stuff and recycle it? It's all going to end up in the trash can. This is insanity because it's not saving anything with these windmills. Plus, it puts our infrastructure at risk because we don't have the technology to store all of this energy. Look at Spain. Spain almost went into a complete blackout because the wind wasn't blowing and the sun wasn't shining. They had cloudy days and they were like a day away from a complete blackout. This is a risk, not saving the planet. And here we have Tim Hodgson saying that the ministers' meeting yesterday was the biggest meeting in Canadian history. Are you buying this? I didn't see Danielle Smith jumping for joy after that meeting.
It was a privilege to be in Saskatoon yesterday. What Canadians saw was the most united First Ministers' meeting in years, if not decades. I was proud to be a Canadian yesterday. Now it's time to get down to work and build.
How much money are you going to put into an oil pipeline?
Canada could be the Dubai of the West. We could have the best hospitals, essentially no taxes. We could have everything that we want. We could even decarbonize, but that could be in the future. We're working on it as we're bringing in revenue. But this government is completely backwards on everything they do. They're selling us this green dream, but in reality, we need to get to work. They need to remove all of these restrictions on oil and gas and just get her done. We're going to find out what kind of thing we're going to get from this government, but I have my suspicions this green energy superpower is going to be an absolute disaster. That's it for today's episode. Do you think, I have a question, do you think Canada could be this energy superpower like Dubai with this green vision? Is that even a possibility? Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks for all the people that have been leaving comments. It's the best way to support my channel. I'll see you on the next report.